Welcome to the Economic War Room. We talk about war a lot, and in fact, I really believe it. We're in a war, and we have enemies, foreign and domestic, and you know it. You've seen all the episodes. You understand what China's doing. You understand what woke capitalism is. You understand how people are attacking your finances. It really is a battle, and we're working with you. But one of the most important things you can do when you're in a war is communicate with those who are on your side. And in fact, you got to communicate with the other side occasionally as well. We brought in my friend Jason DeLaPorte. He is one of the top communication experts in the world. In fact, he trains the biggest and best companies, pharma companies, defense companies, you name the industry. He trains the C-suite, and he trains some of the people down the line as well. His communication tools can help you better understand yourself and how you filter information and receive it, but also how you share information. And when you're working, you're going to need an advisor. We talk about how you need a trained advisor that's a part of the National Security Investment Consultants Institute, and we're putting all our advisors through part of his training so they'll better communicate with you as well. So let's welcome Jason.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm glad to be here.
So glad to have you. You have been at this for a long time. Tell a little about your history, your family, the training. Just give us some stories about who you are and how you got into this business.
Yep. So, how I got into this business is pretty simple. It was through my dad. And growing up, my dad was kind of an all-star athlete. And once that road came to an end, he was heavily recruited by McDonald's in the 70s and became head of training and personnel for McDonald's.
Wow. Did you live in Illinois? Is that where you?
No, we grew up in Albuquerque.
Okay.
And so he did all of that out of the Southwest region. But in that process, he realized that he had a real passion for developing people, developing managers, developing leaders, speaking into people and coaching them. And so about 1980-ish, he decided, you know what, I've built what is now Hamburger University, which is a powerhouse in development and training, kind of a best practice. I'm gonna go do this on my own. And so he started DeLaPorte and Associates, and the real mission was to unlock the potential of people and organizations around the world. So I got into the business because I grew up around this and kind of seeing his passion for developing people and making a real impact.
Well, I've known you for a while. I appreciate what you do. I watch your interactions with other people, and you really apply some very powerful skills. I mean, ninja level skills when you talk to people. It really is a wonder to behold. How do you do it?
Well, I think it would be unfair to not disclose some information. So when I was 12, I went through what is now the #1 communication course in the world. It's called Social Style and Versatility. And so I got that training, that elite level training as you call it, when I was going into 6th grade. And so I remember—
Wow, I wished I had that.
Yeah.
I had some very awkward moments in 7th, 8th, and 9th that maybe better communication would have helped me with.
Well, I can remember the day that my dad walked in and said, hey, you're gonna come up to the office this next week and you're gonna go through a training workshop. And I, was kind of getting nervous because I knew it was gonna be with adults. And I said, what is this? And he said, well, I'm gonna speak to you like a businessman. And so I was, 12 years old. I was going, this is awesome. My dad's never spoken to me like a businessman. And he said, for your entire life, you've had one boss. And I wasn't connecting the dots. I said, I don't get it, Dad. He said, who was your 1st grade teacher? I said, Miss Sanders, right? Who was your 2nd grade teacher? It was Miss Gosnell. He said, this next year in 6th grade, you're gonna have 7 bosses, all on the same day. And they're all gonna have different priorities. They're gonna have different preferences. They're going to have different styles. And so your ability to understand that they're all a little bit different and you being able to adapt to those differences may be the difference between you being successful in that environment or not. Right. So I got that skill set early on, and so what you say is a little bit different, I see as normal because that's kind of how I grew up. So.
Yeah, well, most people have no idea what their social style is, let alone anyone else's.
Sure.
So what was it like? You have 7 bosses.
Right.
Were they different? How were they different?
Yeah, well, I had 7 bosses, meaning I had a math teacher,
Right. And what was the math teacher
I had a
like?
science. He was an analytical, and he was.
Imagine that, math teacher, analytical.
And he was fantastic, but he was very different than me. And so, you know, had I just only used the skills that are comfortable for me, I probably would have never stretched myself to think about how do I communicate to this person who has a very different language than I do. So it really kind of forced me to kind of push my own self, push my own comfort zone, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I became almost enthralled with the idea of how do I go to the next level? How do I kind of raise the bar for myself in the area of communication or versatility? And so it's become kind of a lifelong passion that I don't know, you know, right when I think I'm doing well, I'm reminded that I've only started. You know, I do really well in this conversation, then I go home and completely blow it with my son or whatever it is. So communication is one of those things that I don't think you ever fully master. If you're really in a learning mode, you can always learn something. And I think right now, for where we're at as a country, really kind of dialing that back and making it personal is, in my opinion, super important.
Yeah, well, it is important because there really are differing worldviews that we're facing. Yeah. One worldview is a globalist worldview that may be willing to trade liberty for security and all of these things, and where you fall on that spectrum, but these are real people on the other side. Mm-hmm. They're human beings. Right. They're people that we should care about, and they want good things too. Right. And if we have the ability to communicate with, like your teacher, you had a math teacher, very analytical, you probably had an English teacher that maybe less so, or?
Yeah, she was more amiable.
Yeah.
But to even know that right now is super important, right? I can literally think back to that setting and having practical tools to be able to know, you know, what these things added up to. So, was I successful with them all the time? No. I spent a lot of days in the principal's office, so.
Were you better off because you knew this?
100%.
Absolutely. All right. So the amiable, the analytical, we want to dive into a little bit more. Give people a taste of these skills and help them to understand how they can improve their relationships, improve their relationship with their broker or financial advisor.
Sure, 100%.
And their interactions in the community, because we all have to work together to save this miraculous nation we live in called the United States of America. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to dive into those social styles and versatility. We're talking with Jason DeLaPorte. We're talking about social styles and versatility. I mean, he's been a master of it. He started at age 12. Jason, all right, you got the benefit. Your dad understood this. You got thrown into it very early when it was easy to learn. It's easy to learn when you're age 12, but how do people today, how can they get started in understanding these communication styles and using them in their own life?
Well, the two real practical is, you know, if you don't have a company that already has this indoctrinated as part of your personal development, then, you know, to get access to it, you need to probably find it somewhere online. So there's a multitude of channels to find that, whether it's, you know, through your advanced, you know, curriculum or even the basic. But as you get into it, I think for where we're at right now as a country, there's really four steps for mastery. Okay, so the first part is about knowing yourself. You have to know yourself, good, bad, and indifferent. Okay, I'm going to come back to that one.
Yeah, but I just want to jump in. That is straight from Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Yes.
Know yourself. You know yourself, you know your enemy, but you know yourself first.
And I think that's super important, right? When you talk about the fact that our country's in a very interesting place and we're kind of on two sides, I want to go into that a little bit. The second part, once I know myself, is I have to develop skills and abilities to be able to control myself. We work with a lot of executives that know themselves really well, but can't control themselves nearly as well, right? So just because I know myself doesn't mean I can control myself. Both of these are skills.
Right,
Both of these
absolutely.
are abilities you have to continually pursue and also keep yourself accountable on, right? But once I know myself and control myself, now I can turn my attention to others. How do I know others? How do I understand others? You mentioned social style. There are 4 main social styles, but within those social styles, there's sub-quadrants. So the main styles are driver, right? Expressive, analytical, and amiable. We're all a little bit of each of those, right?
Right. And this sounds like something you get like a DISC or a Myers-Briggs or something that's very similar to that. Is that correct?
100%, yes. And I think there are probably 400 or 500 variations of the original research that was done by Merrill and Reed. So Merrill and Reed were, in this space, interpersonal effectiveness, kind of the Einsteins of the industry. And so social style, all the research, all of the validation, all of that came from 2 folks, Merrill and Reed, in the 1960s. And the birth of their research and all of their application now lies inside of social style and versatility. But that same research was taken by others and applied into different forms. So DISC is one of those, Myers-Briggs is one of those, Insights is one of those. So there's a lot, there's colors, animals, all these different things. And they're all good. They're all good. If your interest is in personal development, I don't think that you can really go wrong by trying to develop yourself.
And that's a big part of step 1, know yourself.
What isn't in some of those that's in the versatility is really the so what. Okay, so I'm an analytical, so what? What am I gonna do with that? The so what is the versatility. How do I adapt? How do I modify my behavior or my approach to be more effective? Right? Because if we're only ourselves, we're probably going to be ineffective about 75% of the time that we're interacting with anyone other than ourselves, right? So how do I adapt situationally appropriately so that I open up the lines of communication that I can effectively execute?
So you have to learn more than your own language.
Yeah. So know yourself, control yourself, know others, and then step 4 of mastery is how do I do something of value for others? So we're going to do something for others. Do they actually value it? If I'm putting $1 into this, pot, am I getting a $5 bill out? Or if I'm putting $1 in, am I getting nothing out? Right. And so that takes a little bit of self-awareness, understanding what to do more of or less of. It takes a lot of failure. Almost all of my successes in life have come on the backside of me failing miserably in a relationship or in a situation. But if you're always in the process of learning, then and you are open and coachable, the sky's the limit.
We were talking earlier about the importance of the golden rule. Can you share that about the golden rule and beyond?
So I'm a big supporter of the golden rule, right? I mean, I grew up
do
learning
unto
the
others
golden rule,
as you would have them do unto you.
And that's great. When I really learned the application of social style and versatility, we talk about the platinum rule. So the golden rule is critical, right? You need to treat others at the very least the way that you would want to be treated. But what we find is that people don't want to be treated the way that we want to be treated. They want to be treated the way they want to be treated. And so really understanding the platinum rule kind of abandons your own agenda. Leave your own agenda at the door. How does my attention and focus become about you? And I think that's missing in our society, but it's transformational when it happens, because when it does, it's magical, right? When people abandon their own selfish pursuits and really work on getting across the aisle, getting beyond the issues, coming to commonality around similar values, that's when real change happens. And that's when some of that magic happens. But it can't happen if you're living stuck on hoping that the world's going to adapt to you, right?
Yeah, what are the odds that the world will adapt to me? It should,
I don't
but
know.
what
You probably
odds-
have some white hat folks that can figure that out, right?
Oh, that's fantastic. And what you've done is teach these skills at the C level, and you said it early on. It is one thing to know yourself. And if you're an honorable, good person, you'll know yourself. When you screw up, then you'll go apologize for it. How much better is it to know yourself and then be able to adjust and prepare so that you can serve someone else?
It's huge. And, I think there's levels to this. So, you find some folks have been doing some of this in some way, shape, or form their whole life. And so for them to go from, what we would call like level 1 basics to a level 2 advanced may not be as difficult. But everybody's a little bit different. We're all wired different, okay? Now, I would argue that we're all wired perfectly. There's no accident to how people are wired, right? We're all unique. We are all wired absolutely different, but there is no mistake in our wiring. Now, here's what I didn't say: we're all perfect. We all have pieces of ourselves we need to leave in the car and not bring into work, or we need to leave in the car and not bring into our home, right? There's parts of me that I should probably not bring into a meeting. But how do I find my sweet spot? By really knowing myself, where I can flourish, and how do I effectively kind of govern myself in a way that not only opens up the lines of a communication, but makes me more effective in those around me.
Well, that's fantastic. So we're going to take another break.
Okay.
When we come back, what I want to do is I want to talk about how a client can speak with their advisor. And we'll talk about one who's been trained and one who's not been trained, but so that they can get their needs, wants, and desires met in their investments. We're talking with Jason DeLaPorte. He's talking about knowing ourselves and knowing others so that we can accomplish something, to interact. Economic War Room is here. We're your tool so that you can interact with your investments, with the world around you, that you can be prepared for problems that are coming and so forth. And regularly, we talk about how you need an advisor to stand with you to help you really navigate the complexities of the very unusual world we find ourselves in. So Jason, we're getting tools, we're learning to communicate. Let's talk about how a client, our viewer, can interact with their financial advisor. What should they do?
Well, I think it's important, if I put myself in the shoes of someone who would be looking for an advisor, because I have done that a couple times, to always choose someone who has credibility that's going to get results, right?
Right. Is that enough? You just
no,
stop
it's
there?
not. It's
Okay.
not. It's actually why I started first, because it's not nearly enough. And I think one of the things that I love about what you guys are doing is you are training advisors that have common approach. They have similar values. If I'm really thinking about an advisor that's going to make a long-term difference for me, what I'm really going to look for, what I would advise someone looking for, especially in today's world, is someone who has shared values with you. If you can't align on shared values, the results are never going to be enough. And I think part of what hopefully people are taking stock in, through this challenging time is, who are you? Not just who are you, my name's Jason, like who are you at your core? What are you about? What are your beliefs? What are your morals? What are your values? What are you for, right? And what are you against? And I think what I would advise anyone who's watching is to say, you have two choices, right? You can either find an advisor who is willing to invest and learn your values, which is what you guys do, right? Or you can go find another advisor. And I think it's pretty much that simple.
Let me see if I can break this down into the practicality. So let's say you've got a client, maybe my age, and they find an advisor, and he's made a ton of money on pot stocks, on marijuana. I don't care what money he's made. That's not a business I personally want to be in, or gambling stocks, or a whole host of other things. I don't care what the bottom line is if it means I'm selling my soul.
Right.
Right. And I think that's what you're saying is
100%.
Performance is not enough.
Yeah, and I think what we're facing today, or what I see we're facing today, is we are reacting to a variety of what I would call symptomatic issues. These are all symptomatic. But when you really boil all these things down to the core, right, the root, it's about a disagreement in some kind of core value. Right. So if I don't value the same thing that you do, you are for evil and I am for good, we're going to end up fighting about a bunch of stuff on the surface that we're never going to be on the same page. So it's impossible for me to choose an advisor that has the same core values as me if I don't even know my own core values.
Right.
So first, I would figure out what you're about, right? What are you for and what are you against? Who are you, right? And I think what you are doing is so valuable. You're aligning like-minded people, right? You can come and play. It's a free world, but you cannot be for this or for this. So you're taking a stand and really kind of coming alongside of folks that have similar beliefs and values. And that's invaluable right now. When you're trying to figure out what's real and what's not real, you're cutting through some of the minutia to say, you can guarantee that this kind of person who is in SIC certified is gonna be a values-based advisor.
Well, you know, there are two sets of values too. Wall Street is pushing ESG, environmental, social justice, and governance. And they all sound good, but when you dig into them, you realize it is a pretty progressive leftist agenda. Mm-hmm. We did a survey. We hired John McLaughlin, one of the top pollsters in the world, said, what do people really want? And they said, we want liberty, security, and values. And then Money Management Institute did another poll and said, what are your top values? And they listed all of them out. Far and away, the two top were my country, which I think is patriotism, and my family. So that's where we are.
Right.
But you know people. Mm-hmm. I've watched you for a while. You know people. You can walk into a room and you can size up a person pretty quickly and you're right a good amount of the time. And I love the fact that you're flexible enough that if you find that you were wrong, that you adapt.
Right.
And that's the versatility part. What should a person do when they walk into a financial planner, stockbroker, or whatever's office and they say, here's what I'm worried about? They say, don't worry about what you're worried about. This is what you should do because it's statistically the right answer. How would you feel? How would you react to that?
Well, probably wouldn't work very well. You know, I probably wouldn't feel very heard. But I would still advise folks to be overly transparent. So if it was me, I would say, here's what is important to me. And I would line it all out. And if it aligns, great. If it doesn't, keep moving. I mean, you have too many choices today. But that's never gonna go well. If you make the wrong selection, you have a hard time ever finding the fruit from that relationship. Selection is the absolute most important thing in identifying the right advisor. So shop around until you find someone who, when you have that conversation, it just works, it just fits. They get you, you get them.
Yeah, and so I think for our audience, and that's why we've got the training, we'll take any advisor that's willing to learn, and we'll train them not only in understanding social styles and versatility, but also in understanding LSV and ESG and the China thread and all of that, but also understanding their clients and what the clients need and want. And so that gives us two messages.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the key is, really being hinged on integrity, and knowing what you stand for and who you are. And so, I don't think we can do too much self-seeking to really kind of figure out what our core values are. And finding an advisor who exemplifies those things is only going to translate into higher success for you, right? And more alignment in what happens, around the next turn. That may be financially lucrative, it may be scary, but if you have an advisor who you're aligned with, you can get through anything together.
Yeah, and that's literally, if we're in an economic war, the weapon is money. And we share Christian values, and Jesus said, if you're not faithful with unrighteous mammon, who will ever trust you with true riches? So this is our challenge. Our challenge in the economic war room is we get a lot of information. We know what China's doing, and we've dealt with the thrift savings plan and how we were funding the Chinese military. We also know about woke corporations and how they've decided to cancel. And you'll hear the horror stories of Coca-Cola training internally saying, be less white. And then they tell you, don't appropriate another culture. In other words, sit down and shut up if you're white. And how do we deal with that? Well, we need to weaponize our money. And so if you are a client, if you're one of our viewers, you need to go and give us your financial advisor's name at economicwarroom.com/advisor. If you're an advisor, you need to get in our training. And you need to download this episode's battle plan so you can read about social styles and versatility and how you can apply them to get better results. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.